I think we needed to get two more guys inside. I thought we were outside a lot offensively. Yes, there was a couple attempts, but we weren't putting enough at the goalie, and that's we're making it too easy of a night on Kemper, and that's something that we want to make that house a lot harder to play against, especially offensively, and get to that blue paint.
That's the voice of associate coach Steve Ott, who joined us following the Blues' 2-1 loss in overtime to the LA Kings. Welcome everyone into our extended post-game coverage, the fourth period. As always, brought to you by First Community Credit Union. Alongside Joe Vitale, I'm Alex Ferrario, as the Blues do fall to the LA Kings 2-1 in overtime. A wild game in the sense of it was low scoring, it was tight defensively, you exchanged blows in the first and third period, and really, Joey V, a goaltending performance. But let's start with the offense, because Steve Ott, of course, talking there about, not getting that second and third guy in on the puck support. And, the narrative of the losses this season that we've seen from the Blues, Minnesota, Chicago, and then tonight, have all been, they're generating those scoring chances. They're just not getting enough will to go to the front of the net.
Yeah, it's an interesting game, in the sense where there was just nothing really going offensively. And, you can look at this game in two different ways. You can be frustrated by it. And certainly, 8 shots through 2 periods, I think. There was like a 15-minute stretch, I think, throughout the game. Where
15:51, so they had their final shot in the second period with 15:51 on the clock on the power play, and then not another shot.
Yeah, that's just, it's really uncalled for, and it's a team that knows that you have to be better than that. You look at that, and you can be disappointed in that. But on the flip side, you could say, geez, you look at that number, you look at the lack of offense, and if I told you that you still got a point out of this game, you'd be like, okay, I'll take that. So, it's like the Jekyll and Hyde. You can look at it from two different ways. Certainly there's a balance somewhere in between. The lack of offense, it was a little concerning in tonight's game. And, I think that the Jim Montgomery, the frustration that we hear tonight is because of players not being on their toes, players not being ready to jump into the mix. And then, as the game progressed on, you got to tip your hat to the LA Kings, because they played just that suffocating style, much like they matched the Blues' defensive style. Honestly, it was two teams that really were defensively mirroring each other.
The Kings did what the Blues did against the Stars on Saturday night.
Yeah, there's just not a lot in the middle. There wasn't a lot available. Was it a little bit of a concern, possibly, that as this game went on, you felt like they lost a little bit of their mojo, right? They were that energy was kind of getting misplaced, or you tried to see Braden Shen bring the guys in the fight, and you saw the hits from Neighbors, the fight from Tucker. I think they were trying. There were some passengers that were trying to to do it. But it just overall, it just seemed like it was a lack of speed, lack of playing on their toes. The transition game wasn't quite there. And, for Jim Montgomery, I would imagine that this game felt a little bit like their practice felt like a couple days ago, which, we touched on a little bit in the pregame, where a couple days ago they had a sloppy practice where passes weren't executed and things weren't just cleaned up and ironed out. And you can see sometimes where practices kind of bleed into games, where I just don't know if the execution was quite there. It was a weird game. Some games are boring games. It was just kind of a vanilla game of just back and forth ping pong, where there just wasn't a lot open either way. And you were happy and fortunate to get that point, get to overtime, and then ultimately just a tough penalty there for Buchnevich to set up a 4-on-3 goal.
Do you sense some frustration for some of those top guys, Joe? Because, Monty says a couple of days ago about we need Thomas and Kyrou to produce. We need them to be leaders. Kyrou does so. Pavel Buchnevich seemed like he was getting a little frustrated tonight. Thomas as well, where some of the offensive chances just aren't going in. Is that what leads to some of these guys starting to press, and when your top guys are doing that, then everyone else kind of struggles?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a little frustration in the sense that there are new players on this team. I think there's a lot of new chemistry. There's new lines. The line juggling has been, like Jim Montgomery said the other day best, it's just been a blunder, because he hasn't seen what he's like yet, and he's going to keep moving pieces around until he does. Jimmy Snuggerud didn't play a lot in the third. Texie, I don't think he saw the ice in the third.
No.
And he's going to hold these guys accountable, and he's going to push the horses that are going. It was a minute and a half to go in the game, and I think it was Walker out there with Matthew Joseph and Pius Suter. Again, he doesn't care. If you want to skate, you want to play, you want to be a part of this group, you're going to get playing time. So, you know, I look at the lack of chemistry for these top guys. It is a little bit all over the place. Maybe it is going to take a little bit more time for them to find that chemistry. But you add Pius Suter there. Now he's playing kind of this top 6 role in the middle. You know, you added Jimmy Snuggerud, who's been up and down in the lineup. You know, Jake Neighbors is moving from the left to the right. You know, Braden Shen's going from second to third line center. You know, it's just been a little bit all over the place. I think you're trying to find a role for Nick Bukestad there in the middle with a fourth line identity. You know, and that's an interesting point. Maybe we'll kind of go into that direction. But I just think that, you know, this was a game last year where you just put out that fixer line, that fourth line, just to create energy and get in the offensive zone.
It feels that they still don't have that.
They don't have it. They don't.
Is it the lack of having Sundqvist and Toropchenko or even one of those guys on that fourth line?
You know, we are going to see at least Sundqvist, I believe, on Thursday, maybe Toropchenko as well. But I think those two pieces certainly can help really shape up what this fourth line can do. You know, you see Jim Montgomery trying to use it. They're going with that Bukestad-Walker group with the Texier at times after goals. You know, we saw right after the Blues scored a goal here tonight to try to keep the momentum going. You know, I just don't know if it's still got that same effect. And listen, what Fox at Toropchenko and Walker did last year, that was just something special. That takes time. But I think having Sundqvist back will certainly help. Maybe you move Bukestad to the wing on that fourth line with Sonny in the middle and then maybe Walker on the right. We'll just kind of see how the shuffling kind of happens. But, you know, this is a game where you could use some energy. You can use a line that can go out there and just continue to play the right way, create energy in the building. And right now, to be fair, they don't have it. So I say all that because there is a lot of new faces. There's a lot of new chemistry. This is a head coach that's trying to work and rework and iron out whatever the heck he's trying to do with the offensive side of things. And it's going to take a little time. And like I said, you can look at this as a frustrating game tonight, and it certainly was in a lot of ways. But on the flip side, I mean, it wasn't really your brand of hockey, and you still walked away with the point, thankfully, because your goaltender was just that good.
Now, I want to ask you about a couple of those guys, Joe. So Texier did not take a shift in the third. I think he took 2 shifts in the second period, and then Snuggerud only took 1 shift in the third period. Did anything stand out to you about those players, or is it just a matter of Jim Montgomery shortening the bench?
You know, I think it's just a shortening the bench, number one. You know, I think Texier, it's tough because here's a player, he's got to figure out a way to maximize, you know, 2-3 minutes of ice time in that first period. Every single game, he's not going to play a lot, and it's not easy. Trust me, it's one of the hardest things in the world to do is to sit a lot and then step over the boards and make an impact in the game. Sometimes it just takes going out there repeatedly and just getting in that rhythm. So he's already off to a tougher place where it's just hard to get into that rhythm. You know, for Jimmy Snuggerud in tonight's game, you know, I'm sure Jim Montgomery, we're going to hear his remarks here in a little bit. I just thought that, you know, it really came down to he just wanted to run 3 lines, really 2.5 lines. He just knew it was getting tight towards the end. It was a tie game. They were down by a goal in the third period. They need offense. They need responsible players that can go out there and play the right way, that are fearless as far as getting to the inside. And if he's going to if he has 6, 7, 8 forwards that are going to do it, he just put them on cycle repeat. And that's just really what we saw. So it was probably a little bit for Jimmy Snuggerud's play. I think most of it was that I think that Jim Montgomery understands the importance of this homestand. He understands the importance of points. He understands the importance of playing good October hockey and being on the right side of 500 at the end of it all. And I don't think right now at this time of the year he's afraid to run those horses. You know, it was 2-day break before after the Dallas game, was 2-day break before that. So I think this is a rested group. I don't think you can run those horses quite like that as we kind of start really approaching some really heavy back-to-back type of hockey, 3 and 4s in some situations. But it's a good homestand where there's been a lot of breaks, and you're going to run those horses, including with the Parekos and the Cam Fowlers on the back end, though.
Let's go on the positive side quick, Joe, because Justin Falk, a little bit of a redemption game for him. I mean, I agree with your breakdown of that goal that LA scored. Falk can do that 100 times, and 99 times he's going to follow through with that drive through the ice, and it's going to be in the offensive zone. But he comes back on the other side. He scores the goal in that third period. And I may have jinxed him, so I apologize, Justin. I was talking about it earlier in the game. You guys were as well. He and Broberg had not allowed an even strength goal all season long, and they were one of 3 deep pairings that have done so. Felt like that was a little bit of a redemption game for Justin Falk.
Yeah, it was. You know, that turnover in the second period, it's amazing because there really wasn't a ton available up to that point, either side. It wasn't just a lot of grade A chances. I mean, there was some grade B. There were some high quality chances, don't get me wrong, but I mean, point blank, just goals should happen. No. And, up to that point in the game, Falk has speed behind him. I love the play. He tries to make a move. I don't have a problem with the move because you got speed. Kempe's flat-footed. Again, you make this move 99 times, you're going to get around him. And this puck just kind of falls right off his heel, right into Kempe. And then, of course, LaFerriere does the rest with the forehand, backhand tuck as Bennington can't swim over and get it. So with that being said, the game starts clicking along. You're in the second. Now you're into the third. And all of a sudden it's still 1-0. You're like, oh, man, don't tell me. This game's going to come down to that one turnover by Falk. And then, of course, in that third period, that's where Justin Falk grabs that puck. Great pass from Thomas. Even a better play from Jordan Kyrou, who picks it up on the backhand and moves it down to Robert Thomas there. Yeah. So to get on the board there and tie the game up and force overtime certainly must have felt good for Justin.
And then final one, it's the goaltending and the three wins that we have seen this season, Joe. One, of course, that Dallas Stars game where Binnington was incredible, but so was the Blues defense in front of them. But now you're talking about the Calgary game that you picked up the win in, and then, of course, tonight. I know it's an overtime loss, but it feels like you wasted maybe one of those goaltending elite performances.
Well, he was so good that, you want to push this thing at least to a shootout. You have a good shot when you can get to a shootout with Jordan Binnington. But, in that first period, it wasn't really the point-blank grade A's like we said. There weren't a ton of them. There were just a lot of shots through traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, Byfield had one in the first period. You saw Joel Edmondson. Drew Doughty had a bunch. But just his ability to see through traffic, to fight through bodies, and to find that puck, truly remarkable. I mean, there was one play there in the third period. Byfield shot it. It was a tip off Armia. Then it was another tip off Fiala. It was
double doink.
It was a double doink, and he slid over left to right and still picked that puck up. I mean, it's those kind of saves that they're not as flashy. You're not going to see the big dramatic glove saves and the theatrics and the crowd on their feet. But those saves, fighting through traffic and making those big time saves in that first period, kept it where it was. And then, of course, he was flashing the leather a lot. LA Kings were trying to expose him on the glove side. Not sure why. He's one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League as far as glove saves. And he was on top of it all night. So, again, that's another situation you could look at two different ways. You can look at it like, wow, you wasted a great performance by your goaltender and only got a point. Or you can look at it like, well, we got a heck of a goaltender. Thank goodness that we still salvaged a point.
Yeah.
So this really has the game. This was a game with a lot of themes in it that you can look at it from both angles. I can promise you one thing. This head coach, though, and this team, they're only looking at it from one angle. There is so much growth here. There is so much potential. They did not scratch the surface of it. They are going to get back to the drawing board starting tomorrow at practice, and they're going to try to rework some things, maybe change up some lines, change up some systems, because although you grab a point, it's not good enough for Jim Montgomery and this team, and you want more. You want more from the players. You want more from the coaches. The fans deserve better than seeing 8 shots through 2 periods and 15-plus minutes of no shots on goal. So that's an area you got to clean up, and they're going to do that.
Well, they got a good team to do it against because Utah seems to always bring the best out of the Blues, even though they've had their numbers in the past. So one of those competitive games you'd imagine. Those shoes look pretty good, Joe. You got the coffee off.
I cleaned them up.
Yeah.
I cleaned them up.
You got the coffee off.
Not all on the back here.
Not all.
Shoot, look at that.
Yeah, you got coffee everywhere.
I got to go home.
Yeah, you got to go home and clean up. Joey, we always appreciate him, man.
Thank you, Alex.
Here you go, Joe Vitale. Appreciate him hanging out with us. That is tonight's Ted Drews 3 takeaways. Ted Drews, it really is good guys and gals. We'll come back with Jim Montgomery, some player reaction from the locker room, and then we'll have our final look as we continue on the 4th period here on 101 ESPN. Alex Ferrario with you. I love talking about Classic Air Care to family, to friends, because when it comes to an HVAC system, man, you got to have the right company that's there to take care of you and expect trust and honesty with that. Because when it comes to something as expensive as your HVAC system, you don't want to try and be upsold to the highest unit out there. You want to make sure you're getting that honesty, and that's what Classic Air Care provides. They've been doing so since 1926. They've got technicians that have been working in this field for 40 plus years, so you know you're getting knowledge when you have one of the technicians from Classic Air Care come out and take care of your system. I've been using them since 2016. My family, my dad's been using them since he's owned a home back in the 90s. So it comes down to just the expectation of honesty with Classic Air Care. So call them today, schedule online, check out their maintenance agreement, because boy, that maintenance agreement comes in handy, especially in the winter or the blazing summer. If some type of issue pops up, you call them, you get priority scheduling, but you get those two fine-tune ups twice a year to make sure that your system's good to go throughout the seasons that are ahead. So call them today, schedule online, do me a favor and tell them Alex Ferrario sent you. It's Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
Welcome back to the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show, presented by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnut on 101 ESPN.
Final time here on our fourth period. It's presented by First Community Credit Union. Alex Ferrario with you. After a 2-1 overtime loss, the Blues fall to the LA Kings. As you would imagine, I'm sure there's a lot of people frustrated out there after the Blues with another home loss. They've lost 3 of their first 4 home games so far early on in the season. But as we just talked about with Joe Vitale, it's crazy to say that they've lost 3 of 4, and they've given up 8 goals in one game. They were shut out in another, and they lose in overtime in another one with only 1 goal. But still sitting at 3-2-1 on this season, which kind of tells you how difficult this Western Conference is going to be, because despite the Blues' struggles, still being 1 game above 500 and still being in the thick of it with so many other Western Conference teams. We'll talk a little bit about that frustration before we wrap it up with tonight's final look, brought to you by Pure Performance. But before we get to all of that, let's get some reaction. First up, let's head down into the Blues locker room and hear from Robert Thomas.
Robert, why was it so difficult to generate offense?
Yeah, you know what? They were really trapping through the middle, and it took us still a third to really get going. And I'm proud of how we responded in the third. That's what good teams do. They, even when it's not their night, they find a way to keep pushing and have a great third period, give us a chance to win the game, get a point. And I feel like we could have won it in the third and had some chances too. So that's what good teams do.
Was it kind of slow out of the gate? Is that how you describe it, everybody?
Yeah, like I was saying, good teams aren't going to have good nights, good starts, but, they find a way to get it done at the end, and we just got to keep on building on that. We got to keep a strong mentality. We got to keep cool, and, really believe we're a good team, and, I think we'll find more consistency.
What did you have in the third that you didn't have in the first 2 periods?
Yeah, I think we got through the neutral zone. I think that was a big one. Started creating ozone time, possession. Drew a penalty, and that's how we tied the game. So, it's kind of how it happened.
Robert, Monty just said that it feels similar to last January before you guys pulled it together. Just the culture, guys pulling for each other. Does it feel similar at all?
Yeah, look, we all believe we're a good team. That belief and our expectations for our team are a lot higher than anyone else might think, and that's something we got to hold on to. We just got to learn how to be a good team. We got to learn how to keep our emotions in check. We got to learn how to be more consistent, and yeah, like I was saying, like even just pulling a point out tonight, shows how strong we are in this room.
Tough break by Falk on the turnover, but nice to see him redeem himself there on the power play.
Yeah, I mean, right away he said he'd get it back, and took him to the third period, but that's a huge goal for us, and yeah, that's one of our leaders, and makes a mistake, no problem, redeems himself.
So again, that's Robert Thomas. Grant Francis was down in the Blues locker room getting that reaction, and I would imagine some people are going to hear that and kind of laugh at, well, good teams don't put themselves into that position. But I agree at some point of what Robert Thomas was talking about, and to pull yourself back into that hockey game and adjust after a second period, that just flat out wasn't good. I mean, you went 15 minutes and 51 seconds without a shot on goal. But to me, I don't think they were outplayed for 40 minutes. The first period, despite them being outshot 10-5, and I know some of this doesn't matter to some in terms of analytic sides of it, but they had a better Corsi rating, which measures offensive zone time. They had more scoring chances, more high danger scoring chances, and they had a power play opportunity, and then they also dealt with a penalty kill where they didn't give up a scoring chance. That first period, to me, came in waves. It started off with the LA Kings, where the Blues didn't have a shot for 4 minutes. Then the Blues rolled through 4 line combos where they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and they couldn't bust through. And then it ended with the LA Kings pushing. The second period is the one that you're isolating, and the second period is the one where things just kind of got off kilter with how they performed, and some of it may have been based off of that turnover where Justin Falk had, and the Blues trying to just kind of get their sea legs back underneath them. But yes, you cannot go 15 minutes and 51 seconds without a shot on goal. Again, they had 13 shot attempts in that second period, and with only 3 shots on goal. There needs to be more there. That's where Steve Ott said it needs to be a commitment from our second and third forwards of going in. But to pull out a point and play as well as they did in the third period, that is a takeaway from this game, and should be a takeaway from this game, because teams that don't have their best stuff, to get a point still is how you keep yourself alive in a playoff race, which, again, to talk playoff race is wild 6 games in, but you can fall out of it pretty easily in the Western Conference in the month of October. So for the Blues, not having your best stuff, yes, there's some questions that should be there in terms of only generating 3 shots on goal, but you also have to look at it as them adjusting in the third period and start to generate more chances. Let's hear from Jim Montgomery before I give my final look.
It's time to hear from the head coach, Jim Montgomery, presented by Fisher Window and Door Store, offering quality American-made Marvin windows and doors. Visit their showrooms in Brentwood or East Alton, Illinois.
Period that wasn't happening in the first 2 for you.
A little more direct. In the offensive zone, we tended to have 2 on the inside, which created more ozone time off of shots and rebounds. I think primarily that was the biggest difference.
Conversely, what do you think 8 shots first 2 periods were?
It's disappointing that we don't start on time. We didn't come close to executing the game plan. We're going to have to change things up and do things different, because we're not, like, the intensity we started the game with, just it wasn't there. It was lacking, and we need to find more consistency with how we play.
Did you feel some emotion being brought in with hits and lost shots and fights in the second period? Is that the kind of emotion you would have wanted to see at the start of the game?
I would just like to see more one-on-one battles. I would like to see us play faster. I'd like to see us play firmer in confrontational areas, whether that's net fronts, it's battles on walls. Like, LA Kings were a desperate hockey team coming in here. I think they had lost 3 straight and 1 in overtime, so it looks like they lost 4 straight. And this is the National Hockey League. Teams are going to be desperate, and we didn't match their desperation.
What does that game look like without Biddington?
play the way you did, especially early.
Well, we would have been down 2-0 after the first, and game probably would have been more like 3 or 4-0 after the second.
Why do you think the game swings have been so dramatic, like Western Canada, then Chicago, and then Dallas, and this one? It just seems like it's pretty wild.
It's the same thing as last year. We're going through the exact same thing as last January. And we're going to have to get it changed. And we're going to have to go to work all together. That's how you gain consistency, is through communication. It's by players holding players accountable, coaches holding players accountable, players holding coaches accountable. We're not getting the job done right now with our consistency, with effort and execution. And we have to demand more of each other.
When you look back in January, what helped you get out of that?
I think a change in attitude of everybody thinking for the team instead of where their role was and where their own situation might be.
Largely the same group. You think that's just the tough part of recreating it?
Yeah, I mean, every year is different. Every year, players start with a different mentality. You don't know what, their goals are. Everybody's goal is to get off to a great start, try and get a goal as quick as you can, try and get a win as quick as you can. And when that doesn't happen, the teams, that's when you get inconsistent. You're seeing it all over the league right now, except for maybe 2 or 3 teams.
I think it was maybe one shift for Jimmy Snuggerud in that third period. What in his game sort of led to him not seeing the ice as much in the third?
It wasn't skating tonight, wasn't checking. So I didn't think it was his night.
It's time to take a look back at tonight's game with the final look.
Driven by Pure Performance. Only stop for all your aftermarket vehicle needs.
I don't know if you could have asked for an any more honest post-game reaction. That's what Jim Montgomery is. We talked about it on pregame with Joe. Jim Montgomery will be very honest. He'll kick you in the butt, like Joe mentioned, but he'll also pat you on the back. And what he said is a concern. The consistency is what we're talking about. You start off the season versus Minnesota. And, Oscar Sundqvist talked about this. We didn't use the audio in pregame, but, Sundqvist was talking a couple of days ago from what he's seen up top. And, he said that first game against Minnesota is understandable because it's the home opener and you got a lot of excitement built up and it's just a dud of a game. You go to Western Canada and you get saved by your goalie and then you beat Vancouver playing well. But the inconsistency is what happened from Vancouver to where they're at right now, where you play a really strong performance. You don't show up against Chicago. You play a really strong performance against Dallas, and you don't show up against, not that you don't show up against the LA Kings, but you don't have the commitment to the offensive zone the same way that you did in that Dallas Stars game that led you to scoring 3 goals. So, they got to figure that out, and there's no easy route to it. I think for fans, you saw what happened at the end of the season and say, well, if they won 12 in a row to get to the playoffs, they should be able to continue that over. Yes, there's also some chemistry that they're trying to figure out in terms of lines because, once again, Jim Montgomery throwing the lines into a blender. And as you heard him say, you're going to have to make some changes going into the next game. But on top of that, it's also that commitment to playing a certain style. It's not an easy style to play like they played against the Dallas Stars for 75 more games. That is a grueling style of hockey to play. But as Jim Montgomery said, it's going to come down to commitment from every single player on the ice to get the Blues to what they want to see. Just going through some of these numbers, you heard the question asked about Jimmy Snuggerud. Only played .948 tonight, only had 1 shot attempt, and it was a shot that was blocked. You had Pavel Buchnevich tonight, who had 4 shot attempts. 3 of his shots were blocked, 1 missed the net, played 18:41. Nick Bukestad, who had 5 hits in this game, played 10:13, did not have a shot on goal. Of the 18 shots, the Blues had 3 from Justin Falk, 3 from Cam Fowler, and 3 from Braden Shen. So 6 of their 18 shots came from 2 defensemen, and then add on to that a Broberg shot, you add in a Colton Parayko shot, and you add in a Tyler Tucker shot. So I just listed off, what is that? It's quick math for you. 8 out of the 18 shots came from your defensemen. That's the commitment that Jim Montgomery is talking about. But, not to be Mr. Positive on this, I'll take another angle because I've seen a lot of reaction to this game saying this team's not a playoff performing team and I can't believe they came out slow out of the gates. there's always another team that's also trying to win. And the way that I looked at this one tonight is, yes, going 15-51 without a shot on goal is not what you want to see. But the Blues had done to them tonight what they did to Dallas on Saturday. Think about the situation. The Blues were taking on a Dallas Stars team that I would say the Blues were desperate at that point because Jim Montgomery has emphasized not losing back-to-back games. Good teams don't lose back-to-back games early on, is I believe what Jim Montgomery said. Also coming off of a performance at home where you gave up 8 goals to Chicago. The Blues were desperate to go out there and perform against the Dallas Stars, and they played like a desperate team. Don't take anything away from the LA Kings, who were a team that lost 4 in a row, that understands they can't keep losing in the Western Conference. So they were about as desperate as any team right now in the National Hockey League, and they played that way. Defensively, they gave no time and space. Goaltending-wise, Kemper looked solid in this game. And offensively, they pushed the Blues. They pushed the Blues to make mistakes, and the mistakes that they made, LA capitalized on. By no means am I making any excuses for the second period, but I do think it's important to look at it as, well, the LA Kings were about as desperate as the Blues were against Dallas, and I'm sure Dallas is reacting the same way following that loss to the Blues that Blues fans might be reacting right now to the LA Kings. But all of those do back up to what Jim Montgomery mentioned, the commitment that the Blues need to have in terms of the team game versus the individual game. And I'm not going to try and butcher the Doug Armstrong line like I did with Joe in that last game, but that's what the Blues mindset needs to be, is working as a wolf pack rather than a lone wolf out there on the ice. And they got a tougher opponent to do that with on Thursday to wrap up this homestand. And actually, it doesn't get any easier because the Blues are also taking on Detroit, then Pittsburgh on the road, both teams that have been on hot streaks early on in the season, and then they'll come back home to wrap up the month of October. But Thursday, they take on the Utah Mammoth. Currently, they are trailing Colorado 1-0 in the second period. Utah was a team that had won 4 in a row, so they might be a little ticked off if they lose this game against Colorado. And remember, Utah had the Blues number last season, with the exception of that last game in the regular season where the Blues blitzed Utah out of the arena to make sure that they made the postseason. So we'll see what the changes look like for Jim Montgomery before that game on Thursday. And that game on Thursday will be right here on 101 ESPN with a 6 o'clock pregame show and a 7 o'clock puck drop with Chris Kerber and Joe Vitale. So that'll close it down for us tonight. Appreciate everybody being along with us here on the fourth period. We do this every post game on 101 ESPN and over on our YouTube channel at 101 ESPN STL. Huge shout out to Jim Hewer for helping us up in the broadcast booth, to Grant Francis down in the Blues locker room, and of course Jordan Deacon, our producer, doing a great job back in our 101 ESPN studios. I'm Alex Ferrario. Hope everyone has a great rest of their evening. We'll talk Thursday for Blues and Mammoth right here on your home for the Blues, 101 ESPN.
Thanks for listening to the First Community Credit Union Blues postgame show, presented by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnut on 101 ESPN.